Chapter 21. Battlefield. The lieutenant tried to dodge the bear attack, but she was too close. The creature's massive paw connected with her side, sending her flying through the air. A loud crack could be heard as she rolled along the ground. Landing on her back a few meters away, blood spewed out of her mouth, and her breath was ragged. Her left arm was bent backward, and the bone pierced her skin. She tried to raise her head, but as she did, it fell, hitting the grass. Her eyes fluttered for a moment before closing. Her chest still moved, but it did so slowly. A few people who wielded bows rushed towards her from out of the bush. They checked her breathing for a moment before dragging her to the back line. "Continue attacking. Do not give it a chance," the commander yelled. With the command, the frozen warriors started to attack the bear again. The monster roared aloud, directing its voice towards the cub. In fear, the cub froze, standing around 20 meters away. It shivered and cried out. The bear roared again, but the cub did not budge. Suddenly, a man who stood around 6 feet tall and wielded a longsword dashed at the cub. His heavy armor clattered as he ran, but the cub noticed the man too late and had no time to escape, only slightly dodging a sword swing. The cub, being off balance, had no way to avoid the follow-up attack, which spewed blood across the forest floor. A massive gash appeared upon the cub's face, its right eye being completely ruined. The cub cried out and writhed on the ground as its face continued to bleed crimson. The bear, seeing this, roared with anger and charged towards the cub. People wielding spears stood in its way, thrusting at it as it tried to get past them. The bear halted as half a dozen metal ends pierced its hard skin, drawing blood and removing fur. The creature roared out as the man raised his sword against its cub once again. Rage could be seen behind the bear's eyes. Below the creature, the ground began to tremble. The grass began to turn black as the ground around it heated. Its paws began to glow slightly, radiating warmth into the area. The bear roared and raised its paw. Giant orange flames surrounded the paw, illuminating the area around it. The people who did not wear full helmets had expressions that screamed fear. The bear swiped at the 6 people who stood between it and its cub. The spearmen tried to dodge or block, but it was of no use, as the attack was far too fast and strong. Its right paw cleaved through the first 3 warriors, causing blood and guts to paint the ground. They did not even get to scream, as their lives were ripped away. The next 3 that encountered the bear's paw were blasted towards a nearby tree. The one on the far left slammed into a massive tree. This was a man who wore light armor and had a few too many knives wrapped around his belt. After he crashed into the tree, the carriage followed. First, as he impacted, he coughed up blood, and a loud snap could be heard where he struck the tree. Following him were 2 more heavily armored warriors. With the momentum of the heavy warrior, they crashed headfirst into the knife-wielding man. The momentum of the armored warrior, with the addition of their weight, was enough to crush the man who was pinned against the tree. The knife-wielding man's head collapsed on impact, followed by the man's chest, which shattered, leaving behind a gaping hole in the man's body. After crushing the first man, the armored warrior experienced the same fate as the final armored warrior, who wielded even heavier equipment, collided with them. As the 2 spearmen's armor clashed, a snapping sound could be heard. The armor ground against each other before both gave way, causing sharp folds to appear in both of the warriors' equipment. The sharp pieces pierced the warriors, causing blood to stain their leather and drip from their metal. The people's hands fell to their wounds, trying to apply pressure, but it was too late. The first man had a coughing fit where he continued to spew his own blood, it seeping down his neck as the helmet contained most of it. After a few moments, the man collapsed and began to spasm before finally stopping, and he then eventually died of blood loss. The second man did not fare much better. He tried to stand up, but it was of no use, as the sharp object and the hard impact had severed his spine. His body twitched uncontrollably for a moment, his eyes darting across the battlefield in fear. In the end, his body gave out, leaving it to rest in the disgusting body fluids. After clearing the path, the bear charged forth, running at unfathomable speeds to reach its cub. The man, oblivious to what had occurred behind him, raised his sword to finish off the cub. Orange light illuminated his armor from behind, causing it to shine and reflect clearly. In said reflection was a massive beast, filled with anger and flaming hot paws. The man bringing down his sword suddenly halted. Blood gushed from his mouth. His sword dropped from his hand as he looked down at his stomach. There was a massive paw that had 5 sharp claws. It had pierced entirely through his body. The flames burned his blood and charred his insides. He tried to scream, but could not. Only the sound of gurgling filled his mouth as he choked on his own blood. Bringing his hands to the creature's paw, he tried to pull himself away, but as he did so, his hands began to bubble, his white skin turning a crisp black. He pulled harder as more blood spilled from his mouth, but it was no use. The monster closed its paw, digging its fangs deep into the man's skin and causing excruciating pain to course through his body. Suddenly, the bear twisted its paw, causing blood to spray, and after a few more twists, it yanked itself out of the man's body, tearing out intestines and multiple layers of flesh. The man's insides lay in the grass, all of them being a deep black color instead of their more alive tone. The man fell to his knees as his eyes began to close. Halting the man from falling to the ground, the bear wrapped its paw around the man's entire head, causing his face to burn and his metal helmet to begin to melt and combine with his flesh. A loud crack could be heard as the bear squeezed tight, crushing the man's head. Once it had obtained a good grip, it pulled on the man's head while holding his torso with its other paw. The sound of skin ripping, muscles tearing, and bones snapping filled the air as everyone looked upon the sight in horror. The monster yanked hard, tearing the man's skull along with his spine out of his body. Letting go of the man's headless torso, the body fell to the ground, flesh and blood pouring from where the man had been ravaged. Holding the man's skull high into the air, the bear roared at the group of people. "Everyone, regroup behind me," the commander yelled, and soldiers followed his orders, lining up in even rows behind him. The bear growled as it stood over its cub, whose fur was soaked with tears and blood. The frenzied bear lowered its head to the cub, and even with all its wounds, it smiled. It growled in low whispers before pushing its cub away from the battle and into the forest. The cub, even though hurt and sad, followed its mother's command, running as fast as it could in the opposite direction. Tears flowed freely from its eyes, sobbing as it fled. The cub disappeared into the bush, and the bear returned its gaze to the group, focusing on the commander. Behind the group, the lieutenant was being forced to drink a liquid, and a faint glow appeared where her wounds used to be. After a moment, the light disappeared, and the face of dread appeared on the people who surrounded her. One woman pressed her ear to the lieutenant's chest for a moment, before they seemed to yell something that I could not understand. The same woman then clasped both hands together and started to press down on the lieutenant's chest. My focus then returned to the commander as he yelled out, "Charge!" With that word, he raised his battle axe and started to dash towards the bear. The people behind him did the same, brandishing their weapons and then starting to sprint towards the beast. The bear roared as the people approached, then charged. The two sides screamed as their front lines met. The bear rammed headfirst into the commander, sending him toppling back a few steps. A few people around him had been knocked away but were mostly unscathed. The commander shouted at the bear as he took a defensive stance. The platoon broke away from the commander as he yelled at the bear. They moved around the creature's side and back, surrounding it. The bear paid them no attention. Instead, it focused solely on the commander. It growled before raising one of its flaming paws. The commander did not dodge, but instead opted to block the bear's attack. Smiling, the bear brought down its paw, slamming it hard against the commander, who raised his axe to shield his body from the blow. A loud clang echoed through the forest. The commander's massive battle axe vibrated violently, but it did not break. The commander's hands quivered and his legs trembled, but he stood in the same place that he had started. The bear looked down at the commander in surprise. The man took this as an opportunity, quickly pushing the bear's paw away and ducking down. He sidestepped the bear's follow-up attack and then raised his axe. Striking down, the axe dug deep into the creature's right paw, almost splitting it in half. It tore through flesh and muscles alike, implanting itself deep within the bear's bone. The monster roared out in pain as the commander continued to push the axe deeper into its paw. Its bones creaked and cracked under the commander's strength. The sound of breaking bones and pained wails filled the forest. In extreme pain, the bear lashed out at the commander, trying to bite down on his head. Noticing the incoming attack, the commander let go of his axe, leaving it inside the creature's body. Quickly, he dodged out of the way of the bear's bite, positioning himself to the side of the bear's head before delivering a mean right hook straight to the monster's temple. The monster roared in agony as the commander's iron gauntlet creaked under the tremendous force of the attack. The commander continued to assault the bear, holding his hands high and weaving out of the way of any incoming attacks while taking advantage of any openings. A left hook followed the right, and then he ducked below another bite. He punched down on the bear's face, leading the monster to receive a mean uppercut to the jaw. Blood splattered from the monster's mouth as teeth fell from the creature. The monster's vision went black for a moment, before slowly regaining itself. The bear bit at the commander again, but was only rewarded with a jab to its nose. The monster, forgetting about its pain, raised its paw again, but the commander had already noticed this, grabbed his axe from within, and ripped it out of the creature. Blood spewed all over the man's armor, dyeing him red. With a swift slash back at the paw, the commander cleanly severed the flaming paw from the creature's body. It fell to the floor, igniting the grass below it, but the monster ignored the pain, driving its head forward towards the commander. The commander, still recovering from the attack, did not react in time, allowing the bear to bite deep into his shoulder. The man yelled out as the monster dug deeper. His armor shattered, the bear's fangs bore down, they pierced through his skin and muscles, destroying the bone in his shoulder. Blood gushed from the wound, but the commander did not halt. He brought both his trembling hands up and clasped one on the bear's upper and lower jaws. He held them together with all his might, his mouth chattered, and the taste of iron filled his mouth as he bit his tongue. His body quaked, and sweat dripped down his face underneath his helmet. But giving it everything he had, the commander did not allow the bear to release its hold on him. With an unsteady voice, the commander yelled, "Do I it now." Chapter 22. Where am I? Upon receiving orders from the commander, the warriors surrounding the bear charged. The bear, in a headlock and missing its right paw, had no way to defend itself. The monster quivered as dozens of spears pierced through its body, causing blood to gush from each wound. The spearmen, taking the bear's halted body to their advantage, continually thrust their spears in and out of the bear. The sworders ran past the spear users, who poked the bear from a distance, slashing at its skin. Blood covered their faces as they dug deep into the bear, cutting out massive chunks of flesh. The commander held on to the bear for as long as he could, but his strength was not enough to keep the bear trapped forever. The creature, after being relentlessly assailed by the warriors, dug its fangs deeper into the commander, causing his shoulder to shatter completely and his arm to fail. Taking advantage of the commander's weakness, the bear lifted the commander off the ground. The commander swore at the beast and punched the bear hard in the face with his remaining usable arm. Blood dripped from the bear's nose, but it did not flinch. The monster growled as the commander's fist shattered under his barrage. His gauntlet creaked, and blood flowed down his arm. The commander cursed some more as the pain overwhelmed him. The bear looked at him, biting hard into his shoulder. With a violent tug, the bear swung the commander from side to side like a rag doll. His armor collapsed under the pressure. The commander yelled out as he was jolted painfully. His skin tore and his muscles ripped. Blood spewed from his shoulder as his bone broke. The bear tugged once more, tearing his arm off his body completely. His blood covered the bear's face, and the monster smiled as the commander's head fell. With a roar, the monster threw the commander to the ground, causing some of his bones to snap. The monster had brought the commander to the brink of death, but in doing so, it had sustained significant damage. Multiple spears were lodged in its body, and it was covered in dozens of slashes. The bear, ignoring the constant attacks, rose to its feet, towering over the people who attacked it. Roaring, the monster's remaining 3 paws began to radiate with even more heat. Its eyes turned from a dark brown to a crimson red, tears of fire running down its face. The bear's vocal cords seemed to distort as it screamed. It looked to the sky as it roared before raising its remaining paw to the sky. With a fast gust of wind, flames ignited the air. A group of 3 that stood below it had no time to react, its flaming paw carving through the warriors like they were nothing. Their bodies are split in half, and the heat of the flames scorches their flesh, causing their bodies to ignite into fiery balls. The warriors around them looked at the charred corpses in shock, halting their attacks. The bear roared, a giant smile plastered across its face. The bear returned to all 4s, charging at the nearest warrior. It was a man who stood about 6 feet 3 inches tall. The people around him scattered, some falling to the ground as they dashed away from the man. The man's eyes widened in shock as the monster rushed towards him. The man took a few steps back before tumbling to the ground. He dragged himself across the ground, his body trembling in fear. His teeth clattered, and tears ran down his face. The bear approached him, and it opened its mouth. Liquid poured down his legs, soaking his pants. The bear looked at him, sniffing at the puddle that formed below him. After taking in the scene, the bear smiled and began to cackle out loud. The man held his sword up towards the bear, but it trembled. The bear brought its hand up, before slowly bringing its hand down upon the man. The man dropped his sword, it clattering against the ground. The bear slowly pushed the man down. His body slowly collapsed against the floor, and his hands tried to pry the paw off of him, but it was of no use. Slowly, the flames scorched his flesh, and he screamed out in pain. The paw continued to push down upon the man's chest, adding more and more pressure. The man's chest plate began to buckle, and his breathing began to become ragged. He cried out, and more tears flowed from his eyes. The people around him did not help, but instead watched as he was slowly crushed like a hydraulic press. The man screamed a horrid scream, his chest plate caving beneath the bear's weight. The paw reached his chest, causing him to gasp. He coughed violently as the bear continued to press down. The sound of snapping filled the forest as his chest began to concave. He began to choke on his own blood, and his chest gave out. Tears rolled down his face, and his mouth moved up and down, but no words escaped. The man's body trembled. He kicked out and threw his arms to the side. After a few moments, the man went still, the bear's paw entering his chest. His ribs snapped, and his heart popped like a balloon. The man's lung then gave out, deflating violently. With a wicked smile on the bear's face, it bit down onto the man's head, ripping it off his body completely. The bear turned toward the next person, charging at them at a terrifying speed. As they approached, the warrior raised their sword to defend themselves, but it was not enough. The bear's head snapped forth completely, obliterating the sword and then crushing the warrior's head. Their brain matter littered the ground. The bear pulled away, blood spewing from its neck. The creature roared again. The remaining soldiers were frozen in fear, trembling as the bear finished devouring the warrior's head. The bear screamed and slowly walked towards the group. There were maybe a dozen remaining soldiers, and out of that dozen, 3 of the warriors, 2 spearmen and 1 swordsman, dropped their weapons and fled in horror. The remaining held their weapons out, but none seemed ready to face the creature. Every one of them trembled in fear. The bear walked forward, melting the ground after each step. The first person in the line charged forth, screaming at the top of their lungs, holding their weapon high. The bear bit at them, but they weaved out of the way of the attack and struck their greatsword into the bear's shoulder, drawing blood that began to melt the sword's metal. The bear roared out, swatting the man to the side. The man lost his sword as he was knocked to the side. The sword that was implanted in the bear began to melt as lava-like blood flowed from its wound. Flying through the air, the man smashed violently into a boulder. A splash of blood appeared where he landed, dyeing the rock red. The next person dashed at the bear, a woman around 5 feet 3 inches. Her skin was light, and she held a spear that was almost as long as she was tall. She jumped at the bear and thrust the spear down upon it. The bear looked at the woman, gave her a dismissive look, and slammed her on the back. The woman screamed out as her spine snapped. She was pinned against the ground, and her body was turned into a pile of flesh. Blood covered the ground, the bear's massive paws leaving tracks in the grass. The remaining warriors did not move. They were petrified with fear. The bear charged at them, emitting an aura of death. Fear shrouded them, and with it, many of the remaining warriors dropped their weapons and turned to flee, but it was too late. The bear was already upon them. With a streak of orange light, the bear's paw cut through the remaining warriors, burning them to a crisp and causing the air to turn rancid with the smell of burnt flesh. Their screams filled the forest as they burned alive, their entrails and flesh falling from where the paw made contact. Their burnt bodies collapsed against the ground, leaving only charred remains behind. The bear stood in a field of carnage and destruction, surrounded by corpses and flesh. Looking up, it roared, signaling its victory. The only people left alive were the archers who had transitioned to support and medical assistance. The bear looked into the bush where the lieutenant was being given medical attention. The woman was pushing on the lieutenant's chest. Multiple archers surrounded the woman, helping her tend to the lieutenant. The main healer looked at the bear who approached and spoke out to the other archers. "Get out of here. You all have lots to live for." A woman who stood near the scene opened her mouth. "But, my lady, you're far more valuable than we are. I will not leave this girl here to die, and I am her only chance to survive, so go, run." The nearby archers stared at her, sadness plastered across their faces. "Yes, my lady." The archers bowed towards her before turning and fleeing into the forest. The bear kept approaching the archer and the lieutenant, preparing to kill them as well. It roared as it continued to move. The bear reached them and raised its paw, preparing to strike down upon them. Suddenly, the bear halted as a voice echoed through the forest. Behind the bear, a man stood, his stance wobbly, his arm missing and blood dripping from his wounds. The commander had removed his helmet, revealing his old skin and many battle scars. He had dark gray hair and a massive cut across his face. He banged on his chest with his good arm, getting the bear's attention. "See come at Emmy, you fucking beast!" he yelled out, his words getting caught in his throat for a few seconds as he spoke. The bear turned instantly, facing the man who no longer wielded a battle axe but instead held a small knife in his remaining hand. The monster growled deeply before charging at the commander. The commander followed the bear's lead, dashing headfirst at the monster. The two reached the center. The bear struck out first, biting the commander. The commander sidestepped the beast and delivered a knee straight to the bear's head. Wailing in pain, the bear's vision went blurry for a moment. The commander, now being towards the side of the bear, grabbed onto its neck before swinging himself up onto the creature's back. The bear roared in anger as the commander straddled it. The commander screamed out as he jabbed his knife into the bear's skull. The bear roared out in pain, its flames growing stronger, but the commander did not let go. He held on with his legs, squeezing the bear's neck so tight that it cut off the bear's breathing. The bear squirmed as he did this before running towards a nearby tree. That tree was the one next to mine. The commander continued to stab the bear, creating an unrelenting stream of blood. The bear screamed out before bashing the commander against the tree, causing his remaining intact armor to break. The commander coughed up blood but held on. He brought his arm up again and stabbed hard into the bear's skull. Both of them were now screaming, blood spraying from both of their bodies. With one final slam and one final stab, both of them fell to the ground. Watching from the next tree over, my eyes widened as both of the powerhouses stopped breathing, blood pooling below both of their bodies. The tree the commander had been slammed against quaked and then fell, slamming into the tree I rested on. Looking up, my eyes widened as a giant branch fell. Unable to move properly, the branch made contact with my head, causing my mind to go blank and the world to go dark. Visions of ruined corpses and screamed wails flashed through my mind. After what felt like an eternity, light breached my eyelids, causing them to open slowly. My body felt groggy, and a bright light above me made me feel dizzy. As my eyes adjusted to the light, one question appeared in my mind. Where the hell am I? Chapter 23, Lumiere. My vision was still blurred, but the room had only one small light above me, which was a lantern that hung from the roof by a rope. The walls were made of simple wood, and a window was on the wall nearest to me. Outside, it was still dark, and tiny lights flickered in the sky. The room was quite bare, with only the thing I lay on and a small wooden structure that was next to me. My body sank deep into the soft thing below me, and my hands dug into the comfortable material. On top of me was a fur covering. It kept me quite warm. Across the room from me was a closed wooden door. It was the only exit from the small room, other than the window, of course. I traced my hands against my skin, realizing that it must have been quite a while since my wounds were now completely gone. Strangely, on top of where my wounds used to be were white bands that were slightly burnt. But even more strange than that was that my body was no longer bare. Pushing myself up and flinging my legs over the edge of the comfortable thing, I threw off the fur covering and stretched out my hands to look at my body. On me were some simple pieces of linen, shaped to fit my body. They were loose on my skin, drooped slightly, yet were comfortable. The lower piece was quite short, extending down to just above my knees, and the top part covered my torso and extended slightly down my arms. Pinching the pieces of linen, they were surprisingly durable and soft, the only rough part being the seams, which had tiny threads running through them. Raising my hands to my head, I let out a loud breath. Putting my feet on the hard floor, a cold shock shot up my legs for a moment before I adjusted to the sensation. The floor was made out of a slightly darker wood than the walls. Taking a few steps, my vision blurred and my legs trembled. Holding onto a nearby wooden box, my body took a few moments to settle. With a slow step, I approached the room's only window. What I saw through it shocked me. An amazing sight startled me. A stone path lined with dozens of wooden houses. On that path were large pieces of wood standing about 3 meters high. On each was a lantern that glowed orange, illuminating the area beneath it. The path curved, and the window that I looked out of did not allow me to see farther along it. Taking in the amazing view, I heard a loud noise come from the other side of the door. Quickly turning, my hand turned into red slime and formed a sharp spike. Preparing to attack, the door opened slightly, revealing a young woman. Taking her in for a moment, I quickly realized that I had seen her during the fight with the bear. She was one of the archers. Before she saw me, my hand reverted to normal. When our eyes met, she gaped at me. "You're awake," she yelled at me. She rushed over to me quickly, placing a wooden bowl on a nearby wooden box. She held onto my shoulders and directed me back onto the soft thing. You shouldn't be moving around. Stay in bed. You need rest. So this is a bed. While sitting on it, my legs dangled over the side. The woman held my arm, looking it up and down, then doing the same with my other one. Next, she moved to my legs, examining them as well. Slowly, she removed the bandages, her eyes widening in surprise as below them revealed my normal skin. She hesitated for a moment before begging to talk. What is your name? My name. Looking at the blank section of my demon system, I answered. I'm not sure. That's okay. Can you tell me your age and where your parents are? She asked. Age, my age. Should I tell her the truth? Would she believe me if I said I was just a few days old, maybe a week, and parents? What are parents? Being silent for a moment, I finally responded. I don't know how old I am, and what are parents? She looked at me, and then smiled. About to open her mouth, a loud knock interrupted her. Looking at the door, the sound of running could be heard on the other side. Just give me a second, okay? I'll be right back. She quickly exited the room, closing the door behind her and leaving me alone once again. Outside the room, the woman walked quickly down a hallway which was lined with lanterns. At the end, she entered another room, one filled with multiple people. The room looked similar to the first, but on the bed was a man surrounded by people. On top of him was an older woman who held pressure on a wound that bled profusely. He was missing an entire arm and had many terrible wounds across his body. He had been bandaged up to the best of their abilities, but the white bandages were dyed a crimson red, blood dripping from them forming pools of blood below. His wounds opened up again. Someone come put pressure on this while I cast a healing spell, the older woman shouted. Quickly, one of the other people in the room took her spot, holding down on the man's wound. The older woman stood back, raising both hands to the man and closing her eyes. For a moment, she stood silent before beginning to speak. Oh, Holy Mother, hear my prayer. Threads of life, knit and bind, restore this child of yours. As she finished the chant, a blinding glow appeared on her hands, a long thread of golden light begging to emerge from her palms. The thread moved towards the man. As it reached him, the thread instinctively targeted his wounds, begging to make his body glow. When they reached the wounds, the threads entered the man's body and began to stitch them up. Golden wire closed his skin, reducing the small wounds to mere scars while only slightly closing the larger ones. After a moment, the light dissipated, and the woman let out a tired breath, holding onto a nearby person who held some fresh bandages. He'll be fine for now, but change his bandages and keep an eye on him. If anything abnormal happens, find me immediately. I can't lose anyone else tonight. She directed this towards the people who stood around the man. They all nodded and started to work to clean and change his bandages. She began to walk towards the room, but as she did, she was interrupted. My lady, I have urgent news about the conditions of that young girl that we recovered, the lady who examined me said. Is that so? Let's hear it, the older woman replied. She's awake, but she does not remember anything, not her name, age, or even her parents. But that's not the strangest thing. Her wounds are completely healed. Awake? And what do you mean her wounds are completely healed? I treated her myself, and I saw the severity of those wounds. Lady Leora, I do not lie. She is in the other room. Go and see for yourself. Fine. Leora stormed out of the room, quickly making her way down the hallway, the younger woman following close behind her. As they reached my room, Leora entered, opening the door slowly. Sitting on the bed, I had put the fur cover back over me, and my eyes were focused on the window. As Leora and the other woman entered the room, my crimson eyes snapped towards them. When our eyes met, Leora was shocked. You truly are awake, she whispered out loud. Slowly, she approached me, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Smiling, she spoke. "Hi there, I'm Leora. I'm the head healer in this small town, and this woman here is Kayla. She's an apprentice of mine." Kayla waved at me, a small smile on her face. "I heard that you can't seem to remember anything. Is that true?" My heart raced as she asked me the question. It's not like I don't remember, it's just that there is nothing for me to remember. What should I tell her? Can she be trusted? Will she hurt me if she finds out that I'm a demon? Okay, it's better to play along for now. Slowly, I nodded my head. "I see. Well, you're safe now. Now no monster or demon can hurt you here," Leora said. Looking at her, a warmth filled my heart, and visions of the monsters that I had encountered so far flashed through my mind, as did the pain I had experienced and the people I had lost. Tears built up at the sides of my eyes, but quickly I turned away and held them back. She paused for a moment and then spoke again. "Can I see your wounds?" she asked politely. Nodding, she looked at my legs, seeing that truly my wounds had disappeared. Moving up to my arms, she examined them as well. While looking over them, she began to speak. "Do you remember anything about how you got here?" she asked. Looking at her, I thought about the question. "No, the last thing I remember is that monster." She sighed for a moment, letting go of my arm as she finished examining it. "I understand. Well, if there is anything you need, ask any of the people in this building, and if you remember anything, make sure to let someone know, okay?" Nodding, the two women left, telling me to get some rest. Watching the door close behind them, I lay down on the bed, looking up at the roof. Dwelling there for a few moments, tears began to flow freely down my face as the reality of the situation finally hit me. I was safe. Looking around the room, I decided to lie down on the soft bed and take advantage of the amazing feeling. My body had never felt this good, having been used to lying on hard rock or in puddles of blood. This was a nice change of pace. Staring up at the flickering flame in the lantern, time seemed to fly by. To my surprise, a ray of light breached the window, illuminating the room even more. Looking at the light, my legs moved on their own, bringing me back to the window. Looking out, the view was so different from what it looked like at night. The road was bustling, filled with so many unique people. People smiled, people cried, and people laughed. It was truly a beautiful sight. On the path, the lanterns that lit it at night had been extinguished, relying on the giant ball in the sky to brighten the world. My head turned suddenly as the door swung open, and a man whom I had never seen entered, carrying a bowl with something inside it. He smiled at me and approached, scooping up the bowl that Kayla had left on the wooden box earlier. "Are you hungry?" he asked while holding out the bowl. My stomach rumbled as the aroma filled my nose. Inside the bowl were small white things that surrounded what looked like meat. Slowly, I took the bowl. "What is it?" I asked. "It's rice and cooked chicken," the man explained, while holding a small wooden tool. "What's that?" I said while pointing at the tool. His eyes widened for a moment before softening. "This is a spoon. This is what you use to eat this with." He demonstrated by scooping up some of the rice before dropping it back into the bowl. Nodding, I quickly grabbed the spoon and dived into the food. It was delicious, crisp, and filling. Each bite tasted like heaven. The man smiled at me as he watched me devour the food in the bowl. "Was that good?" he asked. "Yes," I nodded frantically. "I could tell," he laughed. Grabbing the empty bowl, he set it aside. "I'm Gabe, another apprentice of Leora. I heard that you lost your memory, and I was wondering if you had remembered anything." Looking at the man, my head drooped, and I shook it slowly. "I see. Well, that's okay. Do you have any questions? I will try to answer them to the best of my ability." Thinking for a moment, one question came to mind. "What is this place?" I asked. The man looked at me for a moment before responding. "You're in the medical center right now, but our town is known as Lumiere." Chapter 24. Who am I? "Lumiere," I whispered aloud. The man smiled again, offering his hand and causing me to close my eyes. After a moment, I opened them. Questionably, I hesitated for a moment before slowly reaching forward and grabbing it. He squeezed his closed fist, causing me to flinch. "My name is Matt," he said with a big smile. "Is there something that you'd like me and the others to call you?" Looking at him for a moment, I shook my head. "I'm not sure," I said. His expression loosened for a second before returning to normal. "That's all right. If you remember your name, be sure to let me know." The man stood up. "Well, I'll be off now. Is there anything that you would like me to bring you?" Looking around the room, I shook my head. "I don't need anything." After I spoke those words, the man gave me another soft smile before taking his leave. Listening to his feet move down the hallway, growing quieter until they fully disappeared. Slowly standing up, throwing myself off the bed and onto the floor. The room was cold, so cold in fact that I draped the fur sheet over myself. I had been naked my entire life, even if it was a short life. All I had ever known was cold. Not wanting to live the same way my entire life, I pulled the fur sheet closer to my body. My feet moved across the wooden floor, the fur cover dragging behind me. Searching the room, my eyes fell upon a wooden box that was against the wall. Approaching it, my hands caressed its rough surface. On top of it was a small piece of wax, which seemed to have been burnt. The box was not in the best condition. Some pieces were completely missing. Squatting down, my hands fell upon two metal handles that protruded from the box. Pulling on them revealed that the box was hollow. Inside was quite empty except for a small ball. Grabbing it, I ran my hand over its smooth surface. It was made of pure wood. Examining it for a moment, decides to drop it. It fell to the ground, causing a loud bang to ring through the room. My eyes widened as it did, and I quickly scooped up the ball and put it back into the box before jumping back into bed. My eyes were locked on the door, but to my relief, no one came. Slowly, I stood up once again. Curiosity built up in me while silently tiptoeing towards the door and placing my head against the hardwood, searching for any noise on the other side. After a second of listening, my hand grabbed the handle, pulling the door open slowly. As it swung, a loud creak echoed through the building, causing me to wince and close my eyes, hoping that no one heard it. Once the door was fully open, I poked my head out, looking down the hallway. On both sides, the hallway went directly, with doors and lanterns lining it. On my left, the hallway continued for a little while before ending at a wall that contained a window. On my right, the hallway went quite a bit down, ending in a staircase. Deciding to explore the side with the dead end, I slowly walked down the hall with the fur cover draped over me. Approaching a nearby door, I heard groaning on the other side, along with a few muffled voices speaking. Moving on to the next, the same thing happened, and the next was the same as well. All these rooms were filled with agony. At the end of the hallway, my head leaned against the final door, but this time it was finally silent. Slowly grabbing the handle, I pushed the heavy wood door open. The room was massive, filled with wooden pieces everywhere. At the center of the room was a desk, on top of which were many pieces of paper, a lantern that illuminated it, and a quill that dripped ink. Walking around the desk, I approached a wooden chair, rubbing my finger across it, and a piece of wood broke off and dug into my skin. Looking at the wound, it began to vibrate, then pushed the sliver out of the skin and onto the floor. The small hole it created quickly disappeared, leaving no mark. Slowly, I pulled out the chair and took a seat. My hands ran across the desk and then onto the paper. What are these? I wondered before examining them. Each paper included words and a chart, with a long written portion at the end. Grabbing the first one, I began to read. Patient information. Name, unknown. Gender, female. Age, 16 to 18, estimate. Patient does not remember. Condition, healthy. Diagnosis, memory loss, confusion. Characteristics, long white hair, red eyes, pale skin, 5'6", petite. Assigned healer, Matthias, white. Comments. Found the girl in the forest during the bear hunt. She had sustained some severe injuries. Lady Leora had to cast a healing spell on the spot, after which she was fully examined and treated at the medical center. The girl was not a part of the hunt, but she had ended up receiving many lacerations, protrusions, and blunt force trauma. Surprisingly, after a few hours of observation, the girl's wounds had completely healed. Her healing capabilities had completely baffled the other apprentices and me. Still, according to Lady Leora, it is most likely an intrinsic skill that the girl had acquired over her lifetime. If Lady Leora is correct, then this girl is very talented. The girl woke up after a few hours of rest. She was fully cooperative and seemed to be in good health at first. Kayla was the first to speak to her, and she diagnosed that the girl was suffering from complete memory loss. According to the patient, she could not remember anything from before the bear hunt. Today I spoke to her. She was quite friendly, and it was just as Kayla had said. She was one of the most unique and beautiful young ladies I had ever seen. As per my duty, I offered her food, but to my surprise, she devoured it as if she had not eaten in several days. We spoke for a few minutes before I took my leave, but as I did, I offered the girl my hand. Surprisingly, as I did, she flinched. She may have been abused. We will find out once her memory has recovered. This was about me. Is my rate of healing truly that strange? And being considered talented for having just one skill? Also, the bear, these people truly were hunting it. They think that I lost my memory due to the monster. The final paragraph surprised me. They think I was abused. I'm not sure what that means, but the truth is that I thought he was going to hit me. Looking at the last sentence, my chest tightened for a moment. Should I tell them the truth, or should I keep lying? The question lingered in my mind for a while, but in reality, the only option that made sense was to lie. If they found out what I am, they might kill me for it. Also, losing my memory is a great excuse for why I don't know anything. It's the perfect story. Smiling, I grabbed the next piece of paper. Patient information. Name, Ashvale, Bella. Gender, female. Age, 24. Condition, stable, comatose. Diagnosis. Broken ribs, a broken left arm, multiple deep punctures and cuts, a punctured lung, many fractures, severe bruising, and head trauma. Characteristics. Short blonde hair, white skin, blue eyes, 5'10". Assigned healer, Kayla Moonstone. Comments. She was first treated during the bear hunt after she had sustained multiple severe injuries. Lady Leora cast multiple healing spells upon her, but they were of little effect. Having to resort to using a healing potion, the severity of the wounds on Miss Ashvale lessened slightly. In the end, the potion was also not enough, as Miss Ashvale's heart had stopped, causing Lady Leora to start chest compressions, and the other nearby apprentices and I focused on stopping the bleeding. We treated her at the medical center, where we closely monitored her. During treatment, the bear began to approach us. Lady Leora sent us away, but according to her statement, the commander dealt with the beast and allowed us to return to treating Miss Ashvale. After a few moments, her heart began to beat. Finishing up on site, we carefully extracted Miss Ashvale and continued treating her at the medical center, where we closely monitored her. It has been an entire night, and Miss Ashvale has seemed to stabilize. She has not woken up, but it seems like she will be okay. Looking at her piece of paper, pity filled my heart for a moment. Sighing, I moved on to the next paper. Patient information. Name, Ashvale Roderick. Gender, male. Age, 55. Condition, critical reactive. Diagnosis: broken ribs, an amputated left arm, multiple deep punctures and cuts, internal bleeding, many fractures, severe bruising, and head trauma. Characteristics: short gray hair, brown eyes, white skin, muscular, 6'3". Assigned healer: Leora Bright Ward. Comments: Commander Ashvale was treated soon after his daughter. He had sustained many severe injuries after facing the Aurelian frenzied bear in combat. He had lost a lot of blood and was at high risk of death. Having no time to transport him, I had to cast a healing spell upon him. It reduced some of the bleeding and gave my apprentices and me time to patch him up and transfer him to the medical center. At the medical center, his wounds had reopened, causing me to have to recast the spell. In the end, we were able to get the situation under control. He will be kept in the medical center under constant observation until deemed fit by me to leave. Currently, Commander Ashvale is conscious and very rude, demanding to be brought to his daughter. To his dismay, I have told him to stay in bed and be quiet, or he will die due to his wounds or by me strangling him after what he put me through. Putting down the piece of paper, my eyes were wide. The commander was alive. I was sure that he would not make it through that fight. Looking at the final paragraph, I giggled slightly. Looks like the commander and Lady Leora are friends. Slowly, I grabbed the next paper. Name: Lono Everett. Gender: male. Age: 32. Condition: diseased. Diagnosis: crushed ribs, severed torso, bleeding, multiple broken bones, and multiple cuts and puncture wounds. Characteristics: brown hair, green eyes, white skin, 6 and skinny. Assigned healer: N/A. Comments: died during the bear hunt. My eyes widened as I read. Quickly, I looked at the next one. Name: Lono Mira. Gender: female. Age: 30. Condition: diseased. Diagnosis: crushed ribs, charred skin, bleeding, multiple broken bones, multiple cuts and puncture wounds, severed head. Characteristics: black hair, brown eyes, white skin, 5'4". Assigned healer: N/A. Comments: died during the bear hunt. Throwing the paper down and grabbing the next one. Name: Gray Mark. Condition: diseased. Name: Falu Sarah. Condition: diseased. Name: Weston Gregory. Condition: diseased. They, everyone, all those people had died. My hands trembled and my stomach began to turn. Visions of my siblings flashed through my head. My eyes blurred and I started to hyperventilate. My chest was tight and my hand gripped the linen covering it. Tears flowed down my cheeks and I began to cough. My world began to spin. I grasped tightly onto the desk and closed my eyes. Slowing down my breathing, I began to calm down. My grip lightened as the cruel pictures in my head began to dissipate. Opening my eyes, the thoughts of despair had vanished. Looking down, I saw the pieces of paper covered in tears. Gradually, I put the papers back in order and stood up, pushing the chair out. Looking around the room and approaching a very tall wooden box. Opening it revealed multiple pieces of linen just like mine. They were of all sizes and seemed super comfy. Slowly, I grabbed one of the pieces and rubbed my hand against it, feeling its softness. Smiling, I buried my head into the piece, warming myself up slightly. Suddenly, footsteps appeared in the hallway and they grew louder with each second. Horror filled my soul, and fear could be seen behind my eyes. Looking around quickly, questioning what I should do. The last thing I want is to get caught snooping. My heart was beating fast, and my face began to turn red. The footsteps had turned into two now as a second person began walking. Panicking, I grabbed my fur cover and threw it in myself into the big box, closing it right as the door of the room opened. I held my breath as two voices appeared in the room. Peeking through the crack in the box, I saw the two people. "You wanted to speak to me, Matt?" The woman, whom I instantly recognized as Lady Leora, spoke. She sat down in the chair, looking at him. "Yes, my lady, it's about the girl," Matt said. "I see. What about her?" "Well, today I raised my hand to shake and she flinched, and when I offered her food, she ate it like she had not eaten for weeks." "And, explain your thoughts." I think she was being abused and that she ran away from whoever or whatever was hurting her. That's why she was in the forest." Lady Leora hummed to herself for a moment before speaking again. "You may be right, but it's very coincidental. You do understand that tensions are building between us and the kingdom of Valthorn." "Yes, my lady, but I believe that she is just a scared girl. Look at her, there is absolutely no way that she could harm anyone," Matt yelled out. "Matt, I understand your perspective, but think about it. We are a small village right on the border, and it's not common for nations to use children as spies." She paused for a moment before speaking again. "It's my duty as a healer and as the mayor of this small town to keep my people safe. And think, Matt, she appeared a few days after the bear did. Do you truly think that an Aurelian frenzied bear appeared in the forest randomly? It's far too coincidental." "My lady, but we can't just throw her away," Matt stuttered. "I know that. I'm not a monster. We will watch her and treat her as one of our own, but if I find out that she is a threat, then I will deal with her." Matt was silent but nodded. "Matt, you have a good heart. That's why you're one of the best apprentices I have ever taken. I know you understand this, but the world's a dangerous place, and it is only getting worse. More demons have been spotted, dungeons are popping up all around, and strong monsters have been becoming more common." Her hands trembled for a moment. "Peace in the lands will not last. It has already started to crumble. The bear was just the start. Something is coming, and I'm afraid that it will engulf the entirety of Clara Estrum." She sighed. "I know you want to believe that the girl is good, but truly we know nothing about her, her name, her background. We don't know who she is, so that I will take her in, but I need you to understand that she may not be who you think she is." Matt was silent, looking down at the floor, his fists clenched and his jaw slightly trembling. "Do you understand?" she asked. After a moment, Matt nodded before slowly turning. He thanked her before quickly leaving the room. Lady Leora let out a deep breath. She sighed loudly. Clasping her mouth, she broke into a sob, tears flowing down her cheeks and onto her lap. She wiped at her eyes, but tears continued to pour. She slammed her fist on the desk, causing a small crack to appear. Slowly, her breathing returned to normal, and her tears flowed. She stood up and dusted herself off. Her eyes were slightly red and puffy, but after a few moments, they returned to normal. As Lady Leora walked, my heart seemed to stop. She was approaching the box where I was hidden. Sweat dripped down my head, and it felt like my chest was about to explode. She reached the box and placed her hands on the handles. I held my breath, trying to stay as quiet as possible. To my dismay, she started to pull it open. My eyes closed, but as they did, a noise came from the other side of the door. Someone was running down the hallway. The door slammed open, and with it, a worried voice echoed through the room. "Lady Leora, it's Miss Ashvale. It's urgent, please hurry." The voice I recognized as Kayla's spluttered out. Lady Leora closed the half-opened box quickly and sprinted out of the room. With her leaving, I gasped, releasing a breath that I had held in. Wiping sweat from my forehead, my mind replayed the conversation I overheard. So bad things are happening all over this world, and demons are truly considered bad. Lady Leora is wrong about my intentions, but I can't tell her the truth. Thinking about it some more, realizing Lady Leora was right about something, they did not know who I was. Looking at my pale hands and my beautiful white hair that fell across my face, I asked myself, "Who am I?" Chapter 25. My Name. The question echoed in my mind as I left the wooden box and crossed the room slowly. Reaching the door, it opened slowly with a loud creak. Looking outside, I searched for anyone, but the hallway was empty. My feet moved slowly, pressing against the cold floor. The wooden boards below me squeaked with each step. My heart raced as the distance to my room shortened. After a few more steps, I was only one room away, but while passing the last door, the noise from inside caused me to freeze. On the inside, people were yelling, and there was a lot of movement. My eyes darted between my room and the door in front of me, but in the end, slowly, I grabbed onto the door's handle and opened it slightly, looking through the small crack. The sight was terrible. Inside were multiple people surrounding a bed. In it lay a pretty woman with blonde hair, white skin, and beautiful blue eyes. Even with her helmet off, I could tell who it was, the lieutenant. Her body was broken and bloody. Blood soaked the white sheet covering the bed, turning it a dark red. Below the bed, a pool of blood formed on the wooden floor. Around her, the many apprentices worked tirelessly to stitch up and then bandage her wounds. Nearest to her was Lady Leora, who had her arms out and eyes closed. Her mouth moved, speaking words that I could not hear, but as she finished, her palms began to glow golden. From them, tiny golden strands appeared before gliding elegantly into the lieutenant's body. When they entered her, she began to glow, a golden aura forming around her body. As the light dissipated, many of the lieutenant's smaller wounds disappeared. The many apprentices sighed in relief as the blood stopped leaking from her body. Lady Leora breathed heavily, shallowly. Blood dripped from her nose, and her body seemed to tremble. I got closer to the door as the apprentice Kayla approached her. "My lady, are you all right?" Yes, just tired, that's all," Lady Leora replied. The apprentices looked at her with worry on all their faces. One of them turned away from Lady Leora and walked up to the apprentice, checking the woman's vitals. The apprentice's face scrunched in surprise as they do this. "My lady, her pulse is too slow," the apprentice said. Lady Leora moved quickly, forcing her body to stop trembling. Pushing aside the apprentice, she placed her fingers on the lieutenant's wrist. Her face contorted in horror as she felt the lieutenant's heartbeat. As Lady Leora took her hand off the lieutenant's wrist, his face showed fear. "We are losing her," Lady Leora shouted. As soon as she said this, the lieutenant's body began to convulse, and blood began to spew rapidly out of her mouth. "Turn her on her side. Don't let her choke," Lady Leora shouted. The apprentices moved fast, flipping the lieutenant onto her side, causing the blood in her mouth to flow out onto the ground. The sound of liquid hitting a hard surface filled the room like a crimson waterfall. The blood continued to flow. The lieutenant's skin began to turn pale. Lady Leora stood back and raised her hands again. Kayla saw her do this and screamed at her. "My lady, you can't. You'll kill yourself." Lady Leora did not stop. Her mouth opened as she began to chant. "Oh, Holy Mother, hear my prayer. Threads of life, knit and bind, restore this child of yours." As she stopped chanting, the golden threads left her hands once more. They entered the lieutenant's body once again, halting the bleeding slightly. Lady Leora fell to her knees in a coughing fit. The lieutenant's body stopped suddenly, and blood dripped from her mouth. Kayla put her head against her chest. "No pulse, starting compressions," she yelled aloud. The apprentices flipped the lieutenant, and Kayla straddled her. Pushing down on her chest, she began to pump up and down at a steady pace. Lady Leora looked at the scene in horror. Slowly, she raised her hands, but as soon as her mouth opened and she began to chant, she coughed blood violently. She fell to the floor, blood dripping down her chin. A nearby apprentice reached her quickly, bringing her to her feet before checking her condition. Kayla looked at her master in horror. The apprentice, helping Lady Leora, noticed Kayla. "She's all right, Kayla. Just mana exhaustion," the apprentice shouted before starting to pull Lady Leora away. Kayla, hearing those words, looked back at the lieutenant, continuing to work to keep her alive. After 5 minutes of constant compression, sweat dripped down Kayla's face and her arms were throbbing. A nearby apprentice tapped her on the shoulder, and with this signal, Kayla screamed. Tears ran down her face. She stopped working, and her hands trembled. "She's gone." With those words, the room went silent. Lady Leora sobbed in the corner, and the room was filled with grief. One by one, each apprentice tapped Kayla on the shoulder, telling her that she did everything she could have done. Kayla, looking at Lady Leora, fell to her knees sobbing. Lady Leora, still wobbling, ran to her, embracing her. She patted the girl on the head before whispering something into her ear. After a few minutes of silence, the first apprentices began to move towards the door. As they did, my eyes widened and my feet moved to run, but the fur sheet tangled me and sent me falling. The loud bang my body made startled the people in the room, prompting a male apprentice to rush out. At the sight of me, he yelled, "What are you doing?" Seeing me on the ground, my face shrouded in fear. His anger lessened, and he crouched down and offered his hand. "I'm sorry for yelling. Are you all right?" Nodding, I took it, and he pulled me up. Behind him stood a few more apprentices, who did not look very happy. "Did you see all of that?" he asked. Nodding, I looked away for a moment, the gazes of the apprentices making me uncomfortable. "I see. A kid your age shouldn't have to see something like that. I'm truly sorry." Giving me a small smile, he spoke again. "Let's get you back to your room, but promise me that you'll stay in there for now." Nodding, while slowly following him back towards my room. As we entered, I sat down on my bed. Looking at me with pity, the man turned around, closing the door and leaving. On the other side of the door, I heard the sound of metal clinking, followed by a loud click. Alone once again, my eyes wandered across the room and I explored some more. Grabbing the door, realizing it had been locked. Sighing, I turned away and went to the window once again. The ball in the sky was gone, covered by gray shapes. The world looked gloomy, my head pressed against the cold window, and as it did, the sky began to sob. Small droplets of water fell from it, splashing against the buildings and ground. The water hit the window, sending small vibrations that tickled my brain. My eyes watched as the droplets raced down the glass before disappearing off the bottom. This truly was a sad day. The world itself was crying. Looking out the window, it seemed as if time passed in an instant. Trees swayed in the wind, water fell and formed puddles, and lights began to appear in the houses. From above, a huge streak of light appeared in the sky, turning the whole world white. After a few moments, a roar followed, causing my heart to race. Searching the sky, another bolt of light appeared, and with it, an even louder boom. Smiling, my hand felt up against the window. The droplets were so peaceful, while the roars were so chaotic. Taking my leave, I sat down on the bed, admiring the pieces of linen that were on my body again. Feeling the warm peace, my head fell onto the soft bed. Relaxing for a moment, my thoughts began to drift. I thought about the cave, the monsters, my siblings, the ocean, death, the bear, and then the lieutenant. The world truly was cruel. Pulling the fur sheet closer to me, my knees bent, and I rolled into a ball. The world is full of terrible things, but it's also full of good things, too. The image of Lady Leora, Kayla, Matt, and all the other apprentices flashed through my head. I thought of the commander and how he risked everything to kill that bear. I thought of the countless warriors who died trying. They were brave. They fought while I ran. Shame ate away at me. My hands shook. I clenched them into fists. I remembered how the commander fought. I want to be able to fight like that one day. I want to be strong enough so that monsters will run from me and strong enough so people can rely on me. the same way they relied on the commander. Throwing myself out of bed, I ran to a nearby wall. With all my might, I punched it. My fist bled, but it was worth it, as a small fish-shape imprint was left in the hardwood. Smiling, I punched again, leaving another fist imprint in the wall. About to throw another punch, the sound of yelling stopped me. On the other side of the wall, a man yelled. He seemed to be in distress. What do you mean she's gone?" he screamed. It was the voice of the commander. Pressing my head against the wall, listening to the conversation. Lady Leora's voice responded to the man's questions. "Roderick, Belle is gone. We did everything we could have." A moment of silence filled the room before a loud bang sounded against the wall, sending me tumbling back. As words began to be spoken again, I quickly ran back up to the wall and pressed my ear against it. "Bullshit," the commander yelled. "You're saying that my daughter is dead." "And no, I don't believe it." The man began to sob, his harsh cries filling the room. "Roderick, I'm truly sorry." "She was like a daughter to me, too," Leora said. "She was my daughter, Leora. She was everything to me. She was all I had left." The commander shouted. "How did she die? It should have been me. I couldn't protect her. I should have been stronger. Why did I allow her to come? It's all my fault." The man broke down even more. "Roderick, it's not your fault. She was of age, and it was her choice to go. There was nothing you could have done," Lady Leora shouted. The room went silent. The only sound was the man's sobs. Get out, Leora. I need space, please." I understand. If you need me, ask any of my apprentices." Lady Leora said. The sound of sadness filled her voice. The next second, the door slammed in the other room, and the sound of footsteps filled the hallway before disappearing. The commander's sobs and curses could be heard. Taking my head off the wall, I walked away, sitting down on the bed. A few hours passed, and the water that fell outside only worsened, and the loud booms appeared more frequently. The commander had stopped his crying, but now and then, a curse word would echo from his room. My hands rubbed against my face as my head throbbed from all the stress. Sighing, I took a lap around the room, trying to tire myself out. Sweat dripped down my face after running for around 10 minutes, and finally, I stopped at the window once again. The tapping of a branch that hit the window, the pattering of small droplets, and the sound of roaring in the sky. It was so peaceful. Staring at the stone road, a knock came from my door, causing my head to twist in that direction. After a moment, the door clicked, and Lady Leora walked in, followed by Matt. "Hello," she waved at me, a small smile forming on her lips. "Hi," I waved back. Lady Leora walked to the bed and took a seat. She patted next to her. "Come, sit." Slowly walking over to her, I took a seat, sitting as far away as possible. "So, I heard that you saw what happened earlier. I'm sorry about that." Nodding, my mouth opened. "It's all right. I'm the one who snuck out." My voice echoed through the room. She smiled at me, and with it, she continued talking. "Have you remembered anything yet?" Thinking about the question for a moment before responding. "No." "I see. Well, I need to tell you something. This is a medical center, and I have many more patients who need this room. And body-wise, you are completely healthy, no injuries." Hearing her words, I nodded in agreement as my body felt completely fine. "The problem is, there's nowhere for you to stay." My eyes widened in surprise, darting from her to Matt, making eye contact with the man whose head tilted down, hiding his gaze from me. What will they do with me then? Throw me back into the forest, ship me off. What can I do? But we do have one option. Matt can take you out tomorrow and ask around the village for someone to take you in. Signing, she continued. If no one does, we'll have to send you somewhere else. I'm sorry." My eyes watered slightly, but I took a deep breath and responded, "I understand." Nodding silently, Lady Leora stood up. "Matt will take you at first light. Rest up until then." With that, they took their leave, locking the door behind them. Left alone in the silence, my mind went rampant. I know I can't survive out there on my own. I was lucky these people showed up when they did, or I would have died at the hands of that bear. I'm not strong enough right now. I need someone to help me train, because right now I have no idea what to do. Sighing, I lay on the bed, looking at the roof as time passed. The roars from outside caused the whole building to shake, and the water seemed to pour even harder. The world was weeping. Hours seemed to pass in the blink of an eye, and with it, the light outside the window vanished. Darkness engulfed the village for a few moments until suddenly the lanterns began to glow. All at once, they shone to life, including the one inside my room. They lit up the darkness, and the light reflected off the puddles lining the stone path. The light warmed me slightly, and its warmth seemed to spread throughout the rest of the village. Getting out of bed, I stumbled over to the window, resting my head against it. Examining its frame, I noticed a tiny piece that I had not seen before. It was some latch. Moving my hand towards it, I flipped it, causing the window to loosen slightly. Pushing on the window, it crept open slowly. My hair danced as the wind hit it, and the water fell upon my body, causing me to shiver. I reached my arm out, feeling the small droplets fall upon me. Retracting it, realizing my linen sleeve was drenched. Looking out the window, another flash of light soared through the sky. The sight was truly mesmerizing. Looking back at the room, I was about to turn around until I heard a cough come from outside the window. Peeking my head out the window and running my hands through my hair, the sight I saw surprised me. On my left, another window was open, and the person who leaned out of it was the commander. His eyes were slightly puffy, and I could see marks from where he had been crying. He wore the same type of linen pieces that I did. In his hand was some object. It seemed to be a round mix of herbs. He mumbled some words under his breath, and the object ignited on the edge. The leaves crackled while he brought them to his mouth. Bitter smoke curled into the night air as another roar echoed through the world. Holding onto the object with his mouth, his remaining hand tapped on the wood. Taking the object out of his mouth, he let out a puff of smoke and began to hum a lovely melody, which kept getting interrupted for him to breathe out more smoke. Hum, hm, hum, hum, hm, hum, hm, hum, hum, hum. Smiling, I looked at the man, listening to the mix of song and water. With a final note, the man stopped. "So how long do you plan to watch me, kid?" He directed the words towards me without actually turning his head. My eyes widened, and while panicking, I blurted out, "And no, I wasn't watching you. I was just curious." My hands created a big X spontaneously. He chuckled, a chuckle filled with some pain. "You're that same girl from that night. How did you end up in the forest anyway?" He coughed it out, using his rough voice. Looking down at the street, my heart ached. "I'm not sure. I don't remember much," I said while lying through my teeth. But I wasn't just going to tell him that I'm a demon who has almost died multiple times, who stumbled upon a big cave in a world that I'm pretty sure is not this one, and was transported through a rainbow tunnel, ending up falling 100 meters into said forest. The man hummed again. "So you don't remember anything?" "Not anything before that bear attack." "I see. So, kid, what's your deal? Tell me about yourself, well, at least as much as you can remember." Thinking about it, what is my deal? Who am I? What should I even tell him? Well, I'm just a girl who's trying to survive, I guess. I want to grow stronger so that I don't have to be scared anymore. I want to be able to protect myself and everyone close to me. The man looked at me, and something that I could read was behind his eyes. Well, that's a damn good goal. You should be proud of yourself, kid. Hearing the man's words, my chest ached, and tears ran down my face, leaving me confused. Why am I crying? I asked aloud while slightly laughing. You've been through it, kiddo. Sometimes it's good to let it out. The man's words cut through me, tears beginning to flow nonstop. My hands wiped at my eyes as I sobbed, and my knees seemed to wobble. I cried for what felt like an eternity, screaming into the darkness of the night. My eyes were red and puffy, and my nose was sniffling. My tears had mixed with the rain, but their saltiness allowed them to stand out. With a final sob, my mind felt lighter. Looking at the man with admiration, I smiled. You were right, I laughed. The man chuckled as well. He puffed out smoke once more before covering the burning side with his thumb and tossing it down into the abyss below. I'm sorry about your daughter, I said. The man looked down, tears forming at the sides of his eyes. His mouth trembled, and his hand seemed to shake slightly. Quickly, he wiped his eyes before looking at me. Thanks, kid, I appreciate that. My hand clenched the wood, looking at where my tears had fallen. Sometimes, it's good to let it out, I told the man. He smiled at me. I already did. I've already cried too much for one lifetime. He looked up at the sky, letting water droplets fall upon his wrinkled and scarred face. So, kiddo, do you have a name?